Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. Think of a hobby or a skill that you've wanted to pursue for a long time. Perhaps it's learning to play an instrument like the trumpet or the guitar or the violin, or maybe learning a new language like Spanish or French or Portuguese, or the list could go on, or learning how to fly like Superman. Mine isn't learning how to fly. My dream hobby is actually being a blacksmith. And to be a blacksmith, you need to know about metal and steel and what that is, an anvil. And I don't know what any of that was. I didn't have any idea. So what better thing to research than something that I'm interested in, I would like to pursue, and get better in, and knock out two birds with one stone, a speech and learn about steel. So my research is to tell you about steel. And I have 3 points: the basic ingredients of steel, the basic types of steel, and my experience with steel. The basic ingredients of steel. Steel is basically some combination of iron and carbon mixed with some other elements that give it some other properties, such as the ability to sharpen it, or the ability to make it hard or durable, saltwater proof, rust proof, things like this. So these are some of the other ingredients besides the basic iron and carbon that we would add to the steel to give it different properties. And there are trade-offs. If you make something very hard and you drop it, it's hard, there's no give to it, and it shatters. So there are other elements that we add to give it the exact properties that we want for the different materials that we're trying to make. And these are the 4 basic categories of steel. There are carbon steels, alloy steels, stainless steels, and tool steels. And these are just the basic categories. There are many more types of steels based on the construction and the different varying percentages of those elements. Carbon steel is basically iron plus carbon. And depending on the amount of carbon, you have 4 different types. You have low carbon, medium carbon, high carbon, and ultra high. Low carbon is easy to work and is used for constructing decorative pieces, usually like fence posts and decorative mailboxes, different decorative pieces. Medium carbon steel is used for large structures like bridges. High carbon steel is used for wires, and a lot of knives use high carbon steel, which I'll get to that in my experience, but that's where my interest started, was with knives. And then ultra high carbon, also known as cast iron, is your pots and your pans, basically. Very hard, but also very brittle. Alloy steels. This is your iron, your carbon, plus some other combination of those elements. There's some small percentage based on what you're trying to do. And these are auto parts, electric motors. And then if you add iron plus chromium plus nickel, you get stainless steel. And there are 3 different types of stainless steel: austenitic, ferritic, and martensitic. Stainless steels contain somewhere between 10 to 20% of chromium, along with the carbon, and these are very rust-resistant steels. 11% chromium results in 200 times more resistance to corrosion than steel without chromium. That's 200 times more resistant than steel without chromium. Austenitic has high chromium and nickel and carbon, is used for food processing and piping, and it's a non-magnetic type of steel. Ferritic has about 15% chromium. It's magnetic, hard, and strong. And martensitic is heat treated and is used for cutting tools, such as knives and surgical equipment. tool steels. These are durable and heat resistant. Usually like tungsten or cobalt. Used to make tools like drills. So if you're drilling through other hard metals, you need a harder metals. So these are very durable things. You buy drill bits that are made out of cobalt or tungsten to drill through or to cut through very hard metals. My experience started with knives. So where do you go to learn about knives? Well, I went to the chaplain on base, actually. And the old chaplain used to make knives, and I was very interested in how do I make a knife. So I started with this guy right here. I bought the blade, and basically just shaped a handle a little bit, and I put some pins in there. And I created a little box. This is my blacksmith box, and it has all my blacksmith things. So I have some pins, and those go inside the blades. And then I made this one. I tried, what if I can do some texture to it? And basically, I bought a blade. I didn't know much about metal, but I can put a handle on something and shape it. And then I went and made a little bit more. And then my next experience, when I actually got into metal, that's my masterpiece. Right there, a rivet. Many of you guys know Tony Henderson. Her husband is a blacksmith, and he took some time out of his day to help me with this. So after about an hour's worth of work, this is what I got. My very first metalworking project, a rivet.
He made this.
So think about what that sounds like as far as your instrument. Think about if you're playing the piano and it sounds like that. Or if you're learning how to play the violin and it sounds like that. When you're very first starting, or you're learning how to speak Spanish and you say, hola, or something like that. Think about what that sounds like when you're first starting. Think about pursuing your hobby or the skill that you would like to develop that you've been putting off. And maybe it starts to sound like that. Blacksmith made that. Or it starts to sound beautiful piano music. So I would encourage you to take your hobby and pursue it. My research has led me to learn more about metals, to get to talk with somebody about metals, to get to practice this skill. I would encourage you all to take some time and do the same. Thank you for your time.
How's it going? This is my first evaluation. So, Joe, I hope you get something out of it. I really enjoyed your speech. I learned a lot about being a blacksmith and all that goes into it. I really appreciated you opening it up by talking about how we all desire to learn new activities and incorporating all of our hopes and dreams into your presentation. There were 3 main points that you brought up. You covered them pretty quickly. I think they were the basic ingredients and the types of steel, and then different examples of using steel. I think you could have done a better job of going slower over this point. Maybe it was just me, but I'm not sure if I got all 3 of them correctly. And then as you were going through the presentation, highlighting each one one by one as you went through the presentation. The topic was extremely well researched. You even had references at the bottom of your slides from where you got the material, and you clearly had tons of information about the topic. You specifically asked me to cover or to look at your eye contact throughout your speech. I thought you did a really good job, especially at the beginning. It was great going from person to person, or choosing a couple people and kind of having a couple points in the room that you were looking at. Always engaging the audience. Once you got stressed for time, it seemed like you were not doing that as well. So maybe including less material in your overall speech to give you more time and make you more comfortable towards the end of your speech. With that, it seemed like you were trying to mollify the timer due to being rushed for time at the end. So maybe either rehearsing it a little bit more prior to, or just taking out some material to provide you with more time. As far as your movements go, I thought you did a great job of going back and forth across the stage. I really liked the blacksmith box that you brought out and all the materials that were passed around. Maybe do it a little earlier in your speech to give more time for us to take a look at those things. I think you could have used a couple more like big movements in your speech. Like when I think of a blacksmith, I think of a big anvil and a guy hammering it. So maybe using something like that in your speech as well. As far as the support material, again, definitely great props. I liked how you blew up some of the pictures as you were talking about it, like the rivet that you made. And overall, very informative. I really enjoyed that you brought it all back at the end with talking about our hobbies that we all aspire to, and you encouraged us all to persevere in those endeavors. So I appreciate your speech.